morning and welcome to this morning's webinar on securing government contracts. Many local Aboriginal corporations enter into government service or supply contracts either on their own, in partnership with other organisations or as a subcontractor. Empowered Communities East Kimberley is committed to building the capacity of local Aboriginal organisations and businesses to be lead contractors for service delivery to our East Kimberley communities. I'm Alison Gibson. I'm a Noongar woman from Perth. I'm working here at BBY as the Community Development Advisor, and I'm glad to be with you to facilitate this discussion today. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to all the traditional owners and custodians across the Kimberley, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I particularly want to mention the Mirrawong people that are the custodians of the land that I'm sitting on today. I also recognise the importance and value of the work and leadership of the many language and cultural groups across the East Kimberley. Before we start, just wanted to go through a few housekeeping things. The microphones and the cameras will be switched off for any people watching this session. The chat box is available to everyone if they want to send us any messages during it, whether it's a question or any feedback. And Jenny is monitoring that the whole time we do the session. So please use that to communicate with us during the session. We are also on Facebook Live, so there will be an opportunity for people to post questions on there. We may not be able to get to those during the session, but we will respond to those questions as soon as we can. Today we have an interesting mix of speakers leading today's discussion. We have Wendy Casey, Business Development Support Officer with Morrgul Corporation. Rosie Blood, a Senior Policy Officer in the Social Procurement Team at the WA Department of Finance. Kenny Martins, businessman and contractor from Halls Creek. Lani Levi, Senior Procurement and Contracts Officer at SWEK, and she will also join the discussion at the end. In BBY, I'm supported by Melvin Doretta, and he's the communications officer here and is doing all the IT behind the scenes work. And also Jenny White, who is the organisations development officer, and she is monitoring the chat box and will pass me any notes during that session or communicate to people privately through the chat box as well. So please make sure that is open and use that if need be. So this webinar is a part of a set of activities to help equip a range of Kimberley ACCOs to develop strong and productive relationships with government and non-government programs and take a leadership position in providing service across the East Kimberley. Our first speaker is Wendy Casey. Wendy is with us today as Business Development Support Officer with Morrgul. Morrgul is a Broome-based corporation whose purpose is to help Aboriginal businesses perform better and achieve long-term success. Morrgul's work helps Aboriginal businesses access and be successful in the state government service and supply tendering process. Please put any questions you have to Wendy in the chat box and Wendy can reply later in the webinar or offline. Hello, Wendy. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Alison. Good morning, everybody. Pleased to be here today.
Could you please tell us a bit about your service?
Certainly can. I'll just share my screen so that you can have a little bit of a... Okay. So the Morrgul services, as Alison suggested, has been operating since 2013. We've been supporting local Aboriginal businesses across the Kimberley to secure procurement opportunities. We do this by offering business development and very hands-on one-on-one approach to taking you through the steps of the tendering process. So to enable us to do this, we have been awarded 2 programs. The first one is the Aboriginal Procurement Advisory Program itself, which is funded by the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. Through this program, we provide a very hands-on approach to help you developing the tender itself. We provide services that ensure that, that the tender meets the tender requirements and the guidelines. We find opportunities, so we identify specific projects. We're across all of the stakeholders, know where the funding opportunities will come from. And when you're working with us and we know who you are and what your capabilities are, we are able to match you with those opportunities as well. So in order to do that, we speak directly to the Aboriginal Procurement Policy, which has just been renewed. So we've gone through the first 3 years of the procurement policy, which was hugely successful. Morrgul alone were able to assist businesses to the tune of $10.8 million worth of procurement opportunities for their businesses. So in recent months, the government has put out another round of funding. So it just says here, I've highlighted, the APP has seen targets exceeded over the last, over its 3-year term. And so new opportunities are being created with higher benchmarks, which means we'll be able to help more services, provide more services and help more businesses. The other program that we, so I'll just flick back here. The other program that we offer is Aboriginal Business Capability Program. Now, this program is funded and helps us provide services just across the Kimberley region. It's funded by the Department of Finance. Now, this program helps us to build the capacity of Aboriginal businesses before they go to tender. So we help you understand what the process is, and we do this through a training mechanism, which I'll show you through a little bit later. And we assist them one-on-one services to get them tender ready. So we make sure that you meet all of your business compliance obligations. We can sit with you and review your costings. We help you by developing your capability statements. And we assist you through the registration process. And this is a couple of different layers. So first and foremost, Aboriginal businesses need to be registered on the Aboriginal Business Register and Supply Nations and platforms like that. And then you need to be registered on platforms like Vendor Panel and ICN Gateway and various other platforms that you can actually register your business. So when tenders become available and people are looking for Aboriginal businesses to fill these opportunities, then they're the platforms that they're looking at. On to see who is in the area and what resources we have available to support the program. So that in a nutshell is Morrgul. It is our core business, is assisting businesses in their capabilities and to assist them through that procurement process. So we do this on a one-on-one individual basis with you. It's a very intensive program that we work very closely with you on. So I'll probably leave you at that at the moment. I am going to come back around after a couple of others have had a bit of a chat, and I'll explain what the training program is. So over to you again, Alison. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wendy. Sounds like a really useful program. It's quite a big area to navigate, especially with so many platforms to register on, different requirements for funding and understanding that whole system. And you can assist them through that quite supported way and get that information out and have that those opportunities to tap into different funding that they may not already be aware of. You did mention the Aboriginal Procurement Policy. The McGowan government has committed to at least 4% of procurement coming from Aboriginal businesses or organisations by 2024. Rosie Blood is joining us to give information on the state's Aboriginal Procurement Policy. Rosie is a Senior Policy Officer in the Social Procurement team at the Department of Finance. The team manages the Aboriginal Procurement Policy and provides support and advice to Aboriginal businesses who are looking to contract with the WA government. Please put any questions you have to Rosie in the chat box and Rosie can reply later in the webinar. Hello, Rosie. Good morning and welcome.
Thanks, Alison. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here and happy to answer your questions as we go along. So I'm just going to try and share my screen with you all. See if that works. We got a PowerPoint presentation with a bright yellow painting on there.
Yep, it's come up right.
Okay, great. So Wendy and Alison have both touched on it briefly, but I'll just quickly give an overview of the Aboriginal Procurement Policy, which Alison said our team's responsible for supporting. So it was introduced in 2018 by the McGowan government, and basically it sets out to create opportunities for the Aboriginal business sector. It puts targets on government agencies to award a certain number of their contracts to registered Aboriginal businesses. And that registered part is quite important. So to be counted under the policy, the business needs to be registered either on the Aboriginal Business Directory of WA or Supply Nation. So I'll talk to that a little bit later as well. And these targets, they started at 1% in 2018-19 and they're progressively increasing. So as Alison said, through to 4% by 2023 to 24. So in the first 3 years of the policy, as Wendy said as well, we've seen a significant increase in the number of contracts going to Aboriginal businesses and also the number of businesses that government is working in. So we're looking to hopefully continue to increase those numbers and the breadth of businesses out there that we're working with. We're really keen to support capability building for Aboriginal businesses and also to get all the different government agencies on board with contracting with Aboriginal businesses, because these targets apply at an agency level. So while government as a whole has done really well, and there are some agencies that do really good things in this space, we want to see all agencies working with Aboriginal businesses. And on that point, we actually publish information about agency performance under the policy so far. So we have reports up on our website. So that's worth having a look if you're interested to see how all the different agencies are doing. Cool. And from there, I just want to talk to a few sort of tips and tricks that may be helpful for your businesses or organisations in contracting with government. So it's quite a maze procurement. As we've discussed, it's not something you can pick up in an hour, but hopefully these are some tips that might help you on your way. So government will advertise most of its contracts on this WA, but it's only mandatory for us to advertise anything that's valued above 250,000. So those lower value contracts don't tend to get advertised, but there is quite a bit of information out there that can help you identify some of those smaller opportunities. So on Tenders WA, we need to publish information about any contract that we award above $50,000. So when you search for a contract, you'll be able to see if that contract's expiring soon, the value of that contract, and then it will also have a contact person listed for that agency. So if you see a contract on there and it's something similar to what your organisation might be able to provide, it's expiring soon, it's worth reaching out to that contact person to tell them about your business and that you might be capable of providing the service. And also, we'll also list where tenders have been recently awarded. So if you're a business that's interested in subcontracting on a larger contract, you'll be able to see who that contract's been awarded to be able to then reach out to them and tell them all about what you might be able to do as a subcontractor. Two other useful areas that might be able to help you. I'm not sure if you're aware, but you will have a local content advisor in the Kimberley, and they sit within the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development, and they're really across everything happening in their region. So upcoming opportunities, what work is coming up, and they're sort of in contact with all the government agencies. So they're a really good contact point for work that's coming up. And there's another government agency that runs what they call regional communications forums. And they run each year and they go all around the state and they get all the agencies in the room coming to talk about upcoming opportunities in that region. So that's a useful one to link into as well. So I'll move on to a couple of tips about how you might want to market your business to government. As Wendy said, having that listing on those Aboriginal business directories is really important, but also to make sure that it's up to date. has relevant information. So if you're in a government agency and you're looking to engage an Aboriginal business, that's probably the first place that you'd look. So it's really important that that information is relevant and accurate. And after your business is sitting on the directories, they're probably going to go to your website. So make sure your website's kept up to date and really try and focus on your business's core capabilities there as well. Two other resources. We have on our website a government purchasing officers list. So that list has the contact details of someone in every government agency. So say you've identified an agency that might be interested in the kind of services that your organisation has to offer, you can reach out to the contact person in that list. And lastly, we have an Aboriginal Business Expo coming up later in the year. So I know you're all the way up there in the Kimberley, so I don't know how relevant this is, but we are looking into options to be able to include regional businesses in there. So maybe some online sessions. So watch this space. But we have also had organisations in previous years make the trek down to Perth. So if it's something you're really interested in, we'd be really happy to have the regional businesses in attendance as well. Okay. And I understand that there's quite a few people attending today. A lot of you guys are in the not-for-profit space, so providing community services to government. So I just wanted to point out that it works a little bit differently to commercial procurement. And there's an additional policy called the Delivering Community Services in Partnership Policy. And this policy sets out extra requirements when you're working in that community services space. So it's about productive relationships between government agencies and the community services sector. And it has a bit more options for flexibility to make sure that those services are really meeting the needs of the service users. So just slightly different to how goods and services procurement works. And this isn't really my area of expertise, but I'm more than happy to try and answer any of your questions, or otherwise to pass your questions on to the team in my department that are experts in this space. So I'll be passing on their contact details and also a link to an introduction to community services contracting. And then lastly, I just wanted to speak to some of the different supports that are available. So obviously up in the Kimberley, you've got Morrgul doing a great job of providing support to Aboriginal businesses. Down here in Perth, we've got my team. We're always happy to take phone calls, emails, questions. We're pretty across all the different services that are out there. So we are able to sort of point you in the right direction, answer any questions about contracting. Yeah, more than happy to help. And as I said before, the Community Services Procurement Policy team, they are more in that community services space, but we sit on the same floor. So get in touch with either of us and we'll be happy to help. Also in Perth, we have the Wirra Hub. So they're funded by the federal government to provide support to Aboriginal businesses. Wendy, you might be able to speak to this, I'm not sure, but as I understand it, they're also able to offer support to regional businesses, but they have business support services, they have linking services, a whole bunch of different great stuff. So it's maybe worth checking in with them. From us as well, we have a guide for Aboriginal businesses that has some of the information I've touched on today in a lot more detail. So that's worth checking out on our website as well. And lastly, if you are looking to get yourself registered on the Aboriginal Business Directory of WA, or you need help improving your listing on there, the organisation that manages that directory, the ICN Gateway, they're able to provide you with support to that as well. So worth getting in touch with them. So that's in a little bit of a nutshell, some of the things that my team offers support on. So as I said, happy to answer any of your questions, and yeah, otherwise I'll pass back over to you, Alison.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Sounds like there's lots of help available there, and also lots of opportunities that are probably existing out there that aren't as advertised as broadly, or people don't know about. So worthwhile being proactive in that space and making those contacts to make sure that your agency is on their radar and can be included as possibilities in future funding rounds. We also have Kenny Martin. He is the businessman behind Martin and Sons Contracting, a Hawkes Creek firm. Kenny is a fully licensed tradesperson running his own business in his hometown. We have asked Kenny to share some of his experience seeking contracts and subcontracts from government and business. Morning, Kenny.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. You set up your business in 2017. Can you give us a little bit of background about your decision to set up the business in Halls Creek and your experience trying to get work as a contractor or subcontractor?
Yeah, so my story and my business started in 2017. The journey to starting my business started in 2011, where I got an apprenticeship with East Kimberley Plumbing up in Kununurra. And in 2011, I had a partner. We had a house in Halls Creek, and so I had to leave home to, try and get an apprenticeship and try and complete the apprenticeship, and to better the life of those that are with me, like my wife or my partner and my 3 kids.
Yeah.
And so I went up to Kununurra and I worked for East Kimberley Plumbing for about 3 years as an apprentice, and we worked on around about that time the government had some sort of policy where they will give contracts to businesses or companies that take on indigenous trainees or apprentices. So when I got my apprenticeship in 2011, the East Kimberley Plumbing had received a lot of contracts, and I don't know whether it's because they employed me or they've been in business for a while up in Kununurra, and they're a branch of a company from Perth. Mm-hmm. So so 2011 until 2013, maybe 13 or 14, I was an apprentice with East Kimberley Plumbing, and then I left them to work back home, and then I completed my apprenticeship back home with a local plumbing company who's Tony's Plumbing and Excavation.
Yeah.
And so my apprenticeship with East Kimberley Plumbing was all to do with new builds they had up in Kununurra. They built the East Kimberley Plumbing was a part of that Kununurra Courthouse, the upgrade at the Kununurra District High School, upgrade at the Kununurra the District Hospital. So I was a part of a lot of new builds back then. So while I was an apprentice, my thinking was that it looked real good if I became a licensed plumber, like a contractor. So I think it was in my second year, I thought, well, I'll progress up until to become a contractor. And the way things are looking while I was an apprentice, it looked like my business, if I created one after completing the apprenticeship, I would be looked after in that way. So in 2013 or 2014, I came back to Halls Creek. I was with my partner and children, and I worked for Tony's Plumbing and Excavation. And then I qualified under Tony's Plumbing and Excavation, and then I went and worked as a tradesman for a company called MRB Plumbing, which was while I was an apprentice with East Kimberley Plumbing. The owner of MRB Plumbing was my tradesman, and so he decided that he would create his entity and deliver plumbing contracts. And so one of the questions a lot of these people ask business owners is, can you employ an indigenous person so we can tick the box to say that we've employed somebody who's employing indigenous workers,
Yes. Yeah.
So we ended up getting with MRB Plumbing in 2015 till 2017, I worked for him. We ended up doing a lot of contracts with Pindan Construction, and I think, I'm not too sure if it's that building branch, but I think they no longer exist, that building company. I think they went into administration just recently. And so we was a part of building all these Indigenous housing in Indigenous communities. We went as far as Goldfields. We done Central Kimberley, and we done in the desert here, just south of Hall Creek at Balgo.
Fantastic.
And so it was a good experience as an apprentice, and then as a tradesman, it was really getting your hands down to learning all the learning off your mistakes, basically, as a tradesman when you first come out of, because you're not expected to do too much as an apprentice, but as a tradesman, then you start learning all your stuff.
Yeah.
And then while I was a tradesman for MRB Plumbing, this program where they were delivering Indigenous housing in Indigenous communities started to sort of come to an end, and so MRB Plumbing ended up creating a branch in Hall Creek where I was the face of the company in Hall Creek. And so this company ended up getting his foot in the door in my local town. And then me, in between being employed after becoming a tradesman, I told that owner that I was going to try and get my contractor's license to become a licensed plumber, because Horse Creek at that time had Tony's Plumbing and Excavation. And then MRB had come down to Horse Creek, and I was sort of the front man for the business. And then in 2017, when I took off after receiving all my units to become a contractor, I had to start a business. And so Martin Son was created in 2017, and then it was sort of, I wasn't a licensed contractor at that point, so I couldn't do any plumbing work. Right. And so Martin Son's Contracting, the ultimate view of creating that business was, I had 3 boys, I had a daughter, and I thought, my boys, they like doing stuff with small motors, they like mowing and trimming and just tidying up the yards. So it was more trying to be a role model to them in that field of work, so giving them a good work ethic, or teaching them to become a little bit interested in a little bit of labor, a little bit of physical work, nothing wrong with that. And so I started off mowing people's yards and doing handyman stuff. So that's where the contracting came in, because I sort of had to do something real quick, because there was no plumbers in Halls Creek. MRB Plumbing, I had to leave MRB Plumbing. Tony's Plumbing had ended up losing all the contract because MRB Plumbing was creating a real good show for all the departments in town. So he was getting stuff like the Halls Creek Shire, he was getting Department of Communities, contracts with the head maintenance contractor who's Lakes Maintenance. And and then when I became a licensed contractor, I started going around and talking to these community prominents like Shire Council, Department of Communities, and Department of Housing. And so what happened was, I started to realize that it's not all that what people are telling me it is, So through my apprenticeship, I thought, I'll be sitting on Easy Street once I get my contractor's license. and that has not been the case. So my experience as far as trying to be a successful business in the community town that I'm from has been a bit of a struggle so I've been in business for the last 4 years, and it's starting to get a little bit of a roll on now.
Yes, yeah.
I think so. Like looking back, I think I could have been supported a bit more than what I have been. And then, so now that I've got that experience, and it's just sort of like a patience and consistency, and just some days I was driving around just to be in the town, you know, like people would see my bit. I wouldn't have no jobs, but I just drive up as if I'm going to a job, you know, like nobody's gonna know that I'm not working.
Yeah.
So when at about that time when I started, they were talking about that policy for Indigenous procurement, and they had a meeting up in Kununurra, and I drove up to Kununurra, and that's another thing. They always seem to have, like, I understand Horshrig is a small town, and you probably haven't got the number of people interested in coming to those sort of meetings. So you have it in places like Broome and Kununurra, but there's nothing in Horse Creek. So I got to go to Broome, or I got to go to Kununurra, like just with Morrgul. I deal with Morrgul, but I deal with Morrgul from that Broome department, because Morrgul in Kununurra hasn't taken off, you know, like I've spoken to Wendy in the past. But when I went to Kununurra in regards to that procurement policy, and in 2017, in the lead up to the procurement policy, I started talking to companies up in Kununurra who are building companies. And they, like, one thing I noticed was the sort of backlash from these companies telling me that they felt like slightly offended that I rock up at their doorsteps, knocking on their door, looking for work as a Indigenous man and business. And so I used to tell these blokes that maybe they need to talk to them who created that policy, not me. I'm here to look for work.
Yes.
So
they felt like Aboriginal people had an advantage and they didn't. So you were sort of receiving the negatives of that.
Yeah, I think it was, so they were sort of putting their guard up.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was, to me, it sort of, it looked like this policy that was being created there wasn't enough information for these building companies for them to say, all right, well, Martin Sons Contracting is not going to get all the contracts that come out that's under $50,000. That's not the case. He's got to be competitive. He's got to be able to deliver that contract. He's got to be able to do it properly, you know. So these were the things that these companies, they didn't understand. And then I said, I don't know about this Indigenous procurement policy. I'm not too sure what it is. There's a meeting in a couple of months. You should go there and voice your opinion. But right now I'm here wondering if you got any new bills, or if you got any contract where I can come in as a subby. But so that's been my experience as far as under that Indigenous procurement policy.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I don't know how much contracts or how much money they've come through Halls Creek, or even the East Kimberley, because I do a little bit of work up in Kununurra. I can bounce up there in a day and, you know, do a day's work and all that sort of stuff. So so that's been my experience. I felt like the patience is finally paying off, but I still feel like if you look back, there should have been more support locally, because I'm not too sure across the East Kimberley if there's another Indigenous plumbing contractor. So I've done the 4 years, and I've done an extra 3 years as a tradesman, and then I went for that unit to be able to qualify as a self-certifying plumber. And it's been very hard trying to promote myself as a businessman, because when you walk into these shops, they say, I'm not too sure if you can carry out the task, you know. So it was the Indigenous procurement policy brought the opportunity a little bit closer. But when I walked through the door to talk to this person who's at the reception desk, they moved that finish line a little bit further back. Like they asked me, I don't know if you're capable of doing that, even though I'm a certified plumber, even though I'm a certified gas fitter. So I started thinking, well, all these documents where you say you need to produce to say you can do these contracts or you know, carry out this task, that's your game, that's your ticket. It's sort of, when you're talking to these mobs, it's just not enough, you know. Like that's how I felt, and I always thought, and some of the other things was that when I was working for MRB Plumbing, it was perfect timing when he came in to Halls Creek, because one company was on their way out, and same with another building company in Halls Creek. It sort of seemed like another company had just created itself, and then one company was going out. So that's my perception, is I look at them and they're not Aboriginal companies, they got here, you know, they're white people, so they're non-Indigenous companies that are, you know. And sometimes I felt like, oh, did he use my Aboriginal to secure this contract? Did he use my, you know, like, was I a token to this bloke, you know? Because so MRB Plumbing Company, I worked for him in Halls Creek under the head maintenance contractor or Department of Communities. I worked for him for 9 months, and within that 9 months, I had to be driving out to places like a Balgo, Billaloona, Mullen, all these out communities of the town. And within 9 months, they took the contract off Tony's Plumbing and Excavation, you know. So the work, the hard yards and the labor was put in, so that the performance review from Lakes Maintenance said, well, you know, you're capable of doing the out communities. Do you also want the town, you know? So and so I think there's a whole heap of stuff that to consider. You got, maybe I did a good job on the ground. Maybe MRB Plumbing did a good job administrative wise, and maybe Tony's Plumbing and Excavation were not producing or not delivering what they're supposed to deliver. So all them sort of things that you got to take in. Like, it's not just that I'm a blackfella that this company can win all these contracts, you know. But it's not to say that it's not the case too, you know. And I think that procurement policy, I think there needs to be a session expressed to Gadia, you know, like a non-Indigenous businesses. And so I don't have to express what I think that policy is about, because I'm not a full bottle on it.
So it's not just about getting the word out to the agencies about the opportunity to use that policy, but also to the broader agencies that are impacted by this new policy as well. It does sound like you're a very determined businessman though, Kenny. So and you have achieved a lot.
Thank you.
Did you win a contract with the Water Corp?
So I want a contract with Water Corp. And what was interesting about Water Corp, when you look back at how I won this contract, it was an Aboriginal man from Halls Creek who wanted me to do the contract. So there's obviously I could do the contract because it was to do with plumbing. And then in the past, I've had experiences where I met with people at the reception desk, and they grabbed onto the finish line and they said, oh, we're not too sure if you can carry out this task. Whereas this bloke, he knows me on a personal level. We grew up together. He's a relative. and so he knew that I could do the job.
Yeah,
And
you had that
you know what I
relationship
mean? So,
already.
yeah, so sometime it might depend on who's on the ground that is happy to give the contract out. You know, like if somebody might for that $50,000 up to $50,000 contracts, does that go back to a review panel where they say, oh well, it looks like Martin Sons contract may be able to carry out this contract, but he might need 2 or 3 more persons. We need to ask if he can employ 2 or 3 more people.
Yeah.
You know, and then create like a dialogue. Okay, then that's the support. You know, like because I'm in the deep end here now in Hortrigger. There's nobody with any experience that helped me start my business or create, you know what I mean? So I've had many rivers to begin with, and one old bloke named Peter Day, but he left years ago. And then I started dealing with Morrgul. I spoke to I talked to this mob up here in Broome a little bit more than I do Wendy. But it'd be good if I start talking to Morrgul in Kununurra, because I can go up there and have a chat with her and
absolutely.
Frustration to her, like a face-to-face, you know.
Yeah, I think that's always easier. We will have to move on, Kenny, but thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think making contacts with Morrgul and Rosie as well might help with getting a better understanding of those policies and where you can maybe have opportunities to expand your business. And yeah, they sound like they're good resources, but as you say, it's new work in that area. And there are some teething issues and some unintended consequences that have come out of decisions being made. So it's always important that that is fed back to the agency so that they know about them. Otherwise, they can't be corrected in time as well. We will move on. Thank you so much. And it's quite inspiring to see a person from a remote area create his own business, and it's never easy. There's high success rates for not being successful in that area. So well done on where you've got to, and that's through all your own personal attributes of keeping with it and being a role model for your community and sticking with making those relationships and getting that work. So well done on that. Oh, right. So I did want to come back to briefly respond to any of the issues that Kenny raised. We have did talk for a little bit extra, but we will allow Rosie and Wendy if they did just want to say a few words to that.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to kick that off. Kenny, it's great to see you again. You'll be really pleased to know that in recent months we do recognise that the support in the East Kimberley, there are a lot of Kenny Martins out there, and so Morrgul have put additional resources into the East Kimberley area. So recently we've actually had 2 visits from the East Kimberley, from the Morrgul team from Broome. They come out on a semi-regular basis now and actually connect with local people in Halls Creek. And obviously the recent engagement of myself in the role here in Kununurra. So Kenny, we hear you. And we're definitely increasing our support in the East Kimberley region. So that's what this opportunity provides us for, is to reach out to you, let people know that we're active in the region, let you all know what the services are, and certainly we want to build that capacity for Aboriginal businesses in the East Kimberley, as they have done in the past in the West. So rest assured we're here, and it'd be great to connect with you again, Kenny. I know that they've been supported by the Broome team, but anytime you want to connect with me again in Kununurra, I'm definitely here to help you do that. Another layer to our business development for the businesses as well, is we're developing administration support service as well. So we'll let you know a little bit more about that in coming months as that comes to fruition. But it's basically, you know, to assist local businesses, Aboriginal businesses in the administration of their business. Our core business will still remain, building capacity of Aboriginal businesses, and certainly that focus on the procurement. But we're really driving to really provide services that are all inclusive. So we hope that the local Aboriginal businesses will certainly use those services moving forward. So we appreciate that feedback.
And can they contact you by phone, Wendy, or email?
Yeah, they can contact me directly. I think there'll be some correspondence going out after the webinar. You can still drive the inquiries through, our local or our public contact details, our office in Broome, and the email address and the landline. But you're also welcome just to contact me directly. So those of you that know where I am in Kununurra can reach out. Otherwise, just go through the Morrgul contact lines and they'll connect me with you in any case. So you'll get me in the end for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wendy.
My
Rosie,
pleasure.
did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, sure. Kenny, great to hear your feedback, and I'm sorry to hear about your experience that you've had with non-Aboriginal businesses, making those kind of comments. And that is something that we've heard a few times, and it essentially comes down to them not being aware of what the policy is trying to do, because as you say, we're not handing you any work. You still have to show that you're capable of doing the work and, a value for money and all those kinds of things. So really, it's more about those non-Aboriginal folk understanding that it's not a handout. Really, it's just something that we're trying to do to get agencies to think about contracting with an Aboriginal business. But obviously, the requirement still has to be there, so they might need these services. So it's more just about thinking about whether there's an Aboriginal business capable of delivering it, as opposed to going automatically to that business. So yeah, that's a work in progress for us. And I will also say, watch this space. We are making a couple of more changes to the policy that we're hopefully going to be able to announce next month. So I can't say too much more about it, but pretty exciting. There'll be a few more changes happening there. So once that does go out to the public, feel free to get in touch and ask us all your questions. And when it comes down to offering those services in regional towns, like, we would love to be able to get out across WA and out and speak to everyone face to face, because as you say, that's a much nicer way to connect. But we're a team of 3 down here in Perth, so pretty limited in terms of how much we can get out and about around WA. But what we are looking to do is hopefully to try and bring some of the stuff that we offer in Perth online, so that we can reach out to some of those businesses up north and in those smaller towns as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rosie. We'll throw to Lani Levi now as the Senior Procurement and Contracts Officer with the Shire of Wyndham, East Kimberley. Lani has worked in local government for over 10 years, and before coming across to Kununurra was based in Broome. How are you today, Lani?
I'm well, thank you, Alison.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Hi. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the East Kimberleys before I get started, and also thank you for inviting me to speak today. I found the content very insightful so far, and definitely listening to Kenny's story, I think it's really important that the people that do procurement from a local government perspective understand the supplier stories. So it was definitely good to hear your story today, Kenny. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. Being new to Kununurra, there's probably a few people that have joined the webinar that don't know me or have not met me yet. So my family, they moved to Broome in 1998. My mum met my stepdad, who is Bruno Dan, and what they do in Broome is they have a bush foods business called Twin Lakes. So early in my career, I actually worked with this business as well when they were first starting up. And I have seen firsthand some of what Kenny has explained today, you know, those sort of struggles that Aboriginal businesses face when they first get started. Their business has grown substantially, and, you know, they are now attracting international interest and working with some of the world's best chefs. So they've done really, really well. And they're currently having all their products and things tested by Queensland University to expand that market. So I have watched it grow over time and been a part of it. And, you know, when I stepped away from that, I worked for a number of years for the Small Business Centre in Broome. So I've also seen, you know, what it is like for a small business to get started and to build that capacity and the struggles that, you know, businesses do face. And we worked with a lot of Aboriginal businesses there while I was there. I have 2 children myself, so I decided to move to Perth as they were getting older for their education. And when I went down to Perth, I started working for local government. So yeah, that was about 10 years ago now. I worked for the City of Fremantle. I went on to working for the City of Canning, went down to the Shire of Derrimanga for a little while before going back to the Shire of Broome and working there for the last previous years. So I'm fairly new to the Shire of Kununurra. I've only been with the Shire for about 3 months now. I'm covering a maternity leave contract. So I've loved the move up here, absolutely loving Kununurra. It's a beautiful area. So I'm trying to explore in my spare time and see as much of the country up here as possible. In my organisation, I'm responsible for providing advice to the whole entire organisation across their purchasing activities. So when it comes to anything above 250,000, we go out for tender. I then am responsible for coordinating the whole process when it comes to tenders. I make sure that we are compliant to the legislation that is set out for us. And I sit on the evaluation panels to ensure that those processes are conducted fairly for everyone. So I'll bring up some slides and I'll talk through a little bit about what we do in that space and local government industry, which hopefully give you an understanding of what it's like on our end when we receive requests for quotes and tenders and what we need to do. Just have to bear with me one moment. I'll just share this screen. Everyone can see that. Are we able to see that?
Yes, we can all see it, yes.
Beautiful.
We might need to condense. I've noticed that we've only got 8 minutes left, but we can forward out the information after the session as well.
Yeah. I'll touch on it very briefly, and the slides are sort of designed to have that information there because the webinar will be shared at a later stage. So procurement services, how it works is state government has created a Local Government Act, and that is why local government exists. Our Local Government Act says that we need to have a council. There's also other regulations contained within the local government that has been passed down to us by state government. And one of those is around tenders and the need to go out for tender when it's 250,000 or more. We do have some exemptions there, and I won't go into too much details, but if you'd like to learn more about that, you know, I'm available at the Shire at any time. So our council is also required under the functions and general regulations to create what we call a purchasing policy. And that's for all our purchasing activities under 250,000. We need to follow that. So it's sort of my job across the organisation to ensure that the whole organisation does follow the purchasing policy. The reason we have it, and you can see we've got the purpose on the screen there, but it's mainly for transparency, probity, providing good governance, and, you know, just making sure we're compliant with that Local Government Act when we do purchase goods and services. You can see there's requirements that we put in those purchase policy, and that actually dictates what we must do when we buy goods and services. And depending on the value, we have to actually go out and seek a certain amount of quotes. and that's up on there. There's other things that we have to do to ensure probity, like declare interest. We have to do thorough market analysis. We often have to seek approvals for expenditure, and then we are evaluating each purchasing decision as it comes back in to get value for money for the community. So we have to ensure that when we report back to our community, that they can see that we've made decisions that will benefit them and that we haven't done them for our own interests or interests of just, you know, any one individual party. There are some exemptions that we've actually included in our purchasing policy. The regulations have allowed us to include. And one of the inclusions we've got in there is actually our organisation can purchase directly from Aboriginal organisations without going out and having to follow the bare minimum sort of quotes thresholds that we've put in the policy. So that's what our purchasing policy says up on the screen, and there's also a link there to how you would register with an Aboriginal business directory. We use that to assess and check that the organisation is an Aboriginal organisation prior to going directly to them to seek a quote. Other thing that we do to support local business in the area is we have what we call a regional price preference contained within the policy. And when we receive a quote, we basically give the quote a little bit of a deduction. So we call that a preference rate. And depending on whether it's a goods or services or construction, there's a percentage up there on the screen of what we take away from the price that you've quoted to make you more competitive against, you know, I guess people that aren't from the area. So there's a couple of different ways that a business can be assessed as having a regional price preference. It will either be that they're a regional business and locally based here in the Shire of Wyndham East Kimberleys, or they can use, you know, regional content. So, you know, the value that they then subcontract out to regional businesses in our area, we will assess their quotes against that as well when they come back into us. So that's a little bit how it works and what we have included. As I said before, our council is very committed to helping local organisations and Aboriginal organisations, and they've included those things in our own local government policy that will help you or support Aboriginal businesses to receive work from us. When we don't follow exemptions like that and go directly to suppliers, all our purchasing activity is conducted through a system we call vendor panel when it's a quote for over $10,000. So we have it written in our purchasing policy, and this is to ensure probity across the organisation, that when any officer wants to purchase something above $10,000, they must submit that through vendor panel to obtain quotes. So it's free for suppliers to register for vendor panel. It doesn't cost any money, and the link there once again is on the screen. If you click on that link when the slides are shared, it will take you through and explain how you register for vendor panel. And so vendor panel isn't just utilised by local governments here either. We used it also in Broome when I worked for the Shire of Broome. They also, at the Shire of Broome, they have a very similar purchasing policy to us, and they allow for purchases to be done with Aboriginal organisations directly as well. So, yeah, it doesn't just open, registering with vendor panel won't just open you up to a market just with the Shire of Wyndham East Kimberley. It is actually a national based system. There's also lots of other local governments that are using it across Australia as well. So once you register for your category, and in the case of someone like Kenny, if he's a plumber, if he registers in that category, he will receive notifications for any jobs that go out across vendor panel, not only from, you know, the Kununurra area or Wyndham area, but also across from Broome, and, you know, anywhere nationally he might receive a notification. So
thank you, Lani.
if anyone's got any questions for me, more than happy to to
Excellent. We will be sending out contact details of all the panellists to anyone that contacts our agency or has registered for the session today. So please contact us if you haven't registered, but you have seen it on Facebook or on the website, and we can forward on those details for you to make contact directly with our panellists. We are running a bit over. If you do need to leave, thank you very much for joining us. We will continue for a little bit longer. And just had a couple of other things we wanted to go back to. Wendy Casey had a little bit more information that she was going to share with us. So I will go to you now, Wendy, if you've still got time to go through that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm just sharing, not that screen, this screen. Can you see the Morrgul website?
Yep. Online training course.
Yeah, that's the one. Awesome. So I will just be really brief. I wanted to get into this a little bit further, but I'm aware of our time commitments. So one of our resources that we are able to offer is the online training course. Now, it is an online course, which means that it's an online platform that we can put all of this information up for people to be able to access at their own leisure. But we do recognise also that the online platform might not be the right platform for your type of learning. So while it's all up here, we can actually sit with you and actually go through the training element with you on a one-on-one basis. We've had situations where the kids, log on to this, high school kids and go through it with mum and dad, and lots of different ways that you can use the resource. The reason it's online is for the accessibility, but as I said, we are happy to sit with you one-on-one and actually do the training with you. So this actually goes through a couple of different modules, and I guess this is what everyone's waiting to hear about. So, really understanding what the tendering process is. So it takes you through a couple of different workshops that explain what the process is from start to finish. If I go into the first one, we've got a slideshow. Within this content, it goes through, so in this case, what's the Indigenous Procurement Policy, what our government does, what our registering your business, tendering websites, finding tenders. So you can click into one of the lessons. And then from there, go through the slideshow. It's really well set out. There's a lot of white background, which means it makes it really easy to read. We've really thought about this resource and its entirety. So it's, as I said, it's easy to read, it's easy to navigate, and all the information is a one-stop shop. So just wanted to reach out and let you know that resource was there. As I said, we are happy to sit with you one-on-one and go through that with you. The other little bit of a tip as well is our Morrgul Facebook page. If you go onto here and like this, you'll see that we actually will put up tendering opportunities. So on a regular basis, when we're aware of an opportunity becoming available, we'll be posting it on our social media sites as well. So I guess a little bit of next steps from here is to perhaps have a look at that training content, and then from there we'll help you build your business through recognizing your capabilities. And then once we've done that with you and you're ready to tender, we will actually sit with you and assist you through that tender process and make sure that your tender is meets the requirement of the opportunity that's in front of you. Remember, you don't have to go it alone. Morrgul are here to continue to support Aboriginal businesses to gain the skills and the experience to make your business goals a reality. So I'm inviting each and every one of you to reach out to Morrgul to let us help you and support your individual needs. So that one-on-one connection with you to really identify what it is that you're seeking and to help you, get across that line that Kenny was talking about. So we hope to hear from you, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to showcase it all today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Wendy. it's good to know that there is that information online that people can look at in their own time, because it is quite a massive area to cover, and doing it in chunks makes it a bit more easier for everyone.
Yeah. And you can't teach it all in a day, as we've already identified. So chunking it down and learning little bits of information and taking that away and implementing it's certainly a much easier way to go about it.
Absolutely. Just wanted to thank everyone for participating today. Thank the presenters, Wendy Casey from Morrgul, Rosie Blood from the Department of Finance, Kenny Martin from Martin and Sons Contracting, Lani Levi from SWEK, and I'd also like to thank the BBY staff. This information will be sent out for the contacts of everyone, as mentioned. So if you aren't on that list, if you haven't registered, please let Jenny know, and she will send out the contact details for any of our presenters today. The information is on our website and Facebook page. The recording from today's session will be uploaded on there in coming days, so please share it with others, and it will be on YouTube as well. So if there are others out there that might find this useful, please let them know, and forward on the link to them. The next Stronger Organisations Working Together webinar will be in September. It will feature Adele Cox from the Peak Aboriginal Organisation SNAKE. The webinar will share insights and advice on forming effective partnerships that strengthen both our organisations and the communities they serve. And we hope you can join us. Please let others know that it is available to everyone, and that it will be available online as well. If there are any further questions, please send them through and we will get back to people on those outside of the session. So yeah, if you have sent something through on the chat group or the Facebook page, our office will be following that up with you to get the information you require. I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for being with us, and I hope the session's been helpful for everyone involved.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.